5 minutes to press time, or thereabouts. So we've got to change the introduction on this story and write a new headline on it.
I'll tell you what, let me rewrite the last paragraph in 5 lines.
The still image has never been more powerful. It preserves forever a finite fraction of that infinite time of the universe. And if you've got the pictures of the Queen... They're very depressing pictures, I must say.
Isn't that very unusual for an editor to be involved in the rewriting of an article?
It's unusual for them to admit it.
Well, I think that I don't know, it seems to me that's part of... If the task of editing is to be anything, it is to edit text. If it's to sign expense sheets, I don't want to do it. I personally would be prepared to go to prison, although no doubt some people would say that's mock heroics. The production is superb today. We're well ahead. Everything is set. Everybody who we wanted to comment has said no, and we'll say that on the front page. And in the meantime, I must get on with it.
Well, thank God Harry had such fun. You know? He really had fun, Harry, as an editor. The scoop, the competition, you know, the sleuthing after stories. In his memoir, he wrote, "Did I mention how invigorating it was to have a big-time national newspaper with the best staff in town?" And even when he moved to New York and was the august president and publisher of Random House, he would sometimes snatch up a ringing phone and say, "City desk." So to the end of his life, he would invite budding journalists and students and photojournalists to our apartment to give them encouragement, advice, and connections. So when he died in 2020, I knew that the best way to honour his legacy was to start a fund in his name to support the Harrys of the future, with an annual investigative journalism fellowship, which you'll hear more about in a minute. And that fellowship came to be thanks to the generosity of David Thompson and Thomson Reuters, and supportive friends like Sir Howard and Lady Stringer, Andrew Lack, Mortimer B. Zuckerman, and the Barry Diller von Furstenberg Family Foundation. I'm now turning it over to my partner, Alessandra Galloni, who'll tell you more about the fellowship, and you'll meet the third Sir Harry Evans Investigative Journalism Fellow.
Thank you, Tina. So you may have thought that the morning was interesting, but this is the most exciting part of today. This is when I get to introduce the new generation of investigative journalists, and as Tina said, in particular, the third annual Sir Harry Fellow. Jeff, I think you mentioned earlier Millennium Investigations. We're now in the realm of Gen Z journalists. And so when Tina, Karen, and I got together about 4 years ago to honor Sir Harry's work, we emerged with two initiatives. We emerged with this summit, which is now in its third year, thanks to the enthusiasm and participation of all of you. And then, as I said, this fellowship in investigative journalism. This is for an aspiring young journalist who was awarded the opportunity of spending around 9 months with our investigative team around the world. Our idea with Tina was to create hundreds, thousands of Harrys around the world, and we are determined to make that happen. So today in this room, we have the first two fellows, Waylon Cunningham and Rosa Furneaux. Stand up, stand up. There they are. And it is my absolute pleasure today to introduce the third annual Sir Harry Fellow, Pete McKenzie, who has come literally from the other side of the world, his country of New Zealand, to be with us today. Pete beat out more than 1,000 other applicants, and he just wowed us during the application process with his ambition, his mission, and his experience for such a young age. Pete holds a first-class honors law degree from Victoria University of Wellington and a master's degree from Columbia J School. He has worked as a judge's clerk in the New Zealand High Court and also as an infantry officer in the New Zealand Army Reserve. At Reuters, he really has hit the ground running. And last week, in fact, he published an immersive story on the titanic struggle between America and China in the Pacific Ocean from the bucolic, blue-watered island nation of Palau. As you can see, we treat our fellows well. In an email after we congratulated him, all of us congratulated for his story, Pete responded, quote, "I couldn't have had a better introduction to the Reuters world. I feel extremely lucky to have worked with everyone on this team." Well, Pete, we are lucky to have you in our newsroom, and good luck. Come on up.
Thanks so much. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. That is a greeting in the indigenous language of New Zealand, the little thought of island nation where I was born and worked as a young freelancer. Driven by a calling to shed light on injustices that most people are content to overlook. It's a vision shared with Sir Harry, who once wrote, "Our inquiries were admittedly beset with frustration, and they were costly. Yet," he added, "if the press will not do this work, who else can?" Let me tell you how I found that passion in another distant and little thought of place. Amidst the vast Pacific Ocean lie a few ribbons of coral. Rongelap, Inuitak, Bikini. These atolls seem paradisical, lined with golden sand and populated with coconut crabs. Once, hundreds of people lived on those reefs. And then, in the aftermath of World War II, the United States arrived and removed most islanders, promising that they could one day return, and that the people who they left behind would be safe from what came next. And then the bombing began. Over the next decade, America conducted 67 nuclear tests on those islands, with the cumulative force of 7,000 Hiroshimas. Mushroom clouds of irradiated coral lit the sky a ghastly red and then rained down on the islets below. Those who had been removed would never permanently return. Those left behind were poisoned. America created a $60-odd million trust fund for the residents of one contaminated atoll, which helped with food and rent for a community now in exile. Then, in 2017, a new mayor convinced the Trump administration to hand over control of that fund. Fast forward 6 years to 2023, when I arrived in the islands as a 23-year-old freelancer on my first foreign reporting trip. I was terrified. I was there to report a different story, but a man came up to me. "Are you the journalist?" he asked. In that part of the world, journalists are a novelty. And then he said some magic words. "I have a story for you." The fund had stopped issuing payments. Families were going without food. Local politicians didn't seem to care. Local reporters hadn't been able to get answers. And frankly, US officials didn't want to get involved. I started digging. Locals told me about their struggles. Officials spirited me secret documents. And the mayor, at the heart of it all, I can't describe my surprise, handed me bank statements, which confirmed that through mismanagement and outright corruption, he had drained the fund. from $60 million to 100,000. The story appeared across a full page of the New York Times. It sparked the first anti-corruption protests on the islands. American senators grilled officials. The mayor was ousted. For a young journalist, that experience was revelatory. This was impact. In that moment, I knew that these overlooked injustices at the margins of the world are the stories that I want to spend the rest of my life chasing. Because those forgotten stories aren't merely worthy, they're gripping. By chasing them, I've discovered how hundreds of American veterans are arbitrarily refused healthcare to which they're entitled, how hundreds of often abusive Chinese fishing vessels infiltrated the fleets of vulnerable nations, how dozens of Catholic priests were hidden in Pacific Isles after abusing children in the West, and most recently with Reuters, how alleged criminals with ties to the Chinese government used cash donations to win power in a critical American military stronghold. I still have so much to learn. That is why my experience with Reuters and the Sahari Fellowship has been so transformational. In Tina, in Alessandra, the amazing Durham team, and the phenomenal Reuters journalists that I get to work alongside, in particular Peter Hirschberg, Reuters' truly remarkable head of investigations for Asia, Europe, and Africa, I've found the mentorship that young journalists dream of. And by learning more about the impact that Sir Harry had in his storied career, I've been reminded that ours is a noble calling. Sir Harry once said, "We have to do the vital stuff of placing things on the record, of challenging the official account." He never lost faith that by doing so, we could make a difference. He was right. When done well, real journalism does something remarkable. It opens people's eyes to new realities, and it shifts the world, ever so slightly, in a better direction. Thank you.